Hey man, it's Brother Charles, Church Basement. Welcome back, man, to another installment. We're gonna get right into it. This week we're gonna be talking about a lot of good stuff. Mostly we're gonna be gearing it towards mental health. Now, mental health actually has, I think, slowly but surely been a topic that is losing its stigma. It's not as taboo anymore for black folk, especially black men, to be talking about it. But I think that when topics are starting to become more discussed, they become more mainstream, more streamlined, there becomes a lack, there becomes a void, there becomes missed opportunities to really break down and define the levels, the spectrums, the dualities, I would say, misquotes, the overanalyzings, like all of those things. I think that happens a lot with mental health. And I think that people, in my opinion, are starting to paint mental health as this like wide umbrella of things, but at the same time make it very like one-sided or have just one rigid definition. And that's not the truth at all. So I want to talk about my experience with what I like to call mental warfare, because in war, there's peace times and there's war times. And for those of us who have dealt with mental illness before, you recognize that there are days where everything's peachy keen. There's days where, you could be better, you could be worse. And then there's days where it's like a full on assault of the mind, on the mind. It's kind of crazy. So I just want to talk about my experience with mental health, my experience with therapy, my experience with medications, and how I combined my bringing myself out of a very dark place in combination with retuning, refining, and reinforcing myself in my faith simultaneously, and how those two, for me, go hand in hand, and how hopefully, like, after listening to this, reading the blog, which is up, links on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, which are my main mediums. It takes you straight to the blog website. How I break down my experiences and things and strategies that I used. And hopefully, if you're going through something right now, number one, praying God's coverings over you. May the Lord place a hedge of protection over your mind and keep you, and allow your thoughts to not be intrusive but healing. And transition that, right? And how we can come out of that, and it's not forever. It will be a part of your testimony in Jesus' name. So the scripture of the week, John 14, verse 1. Peace I live with you. My peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. Song of the week is Something About an Angel by Kirk Franklin, featuring Rance Allen and them. I think it's called like the Rance Allen Group, but don't nobody know nobody but Rance Allen. You probably don't even know who Rance Allen is. Just listen to that, John. The first line in the blog, please read the blog, is, to be honest, antidepressants go down well with Shasta Twist. And to me, that is the perfect depiction of my process with my own mental health, is like picking out little pockets of positivity to compensate for the very low lows that I had for a very long time. And I compare it to, I compare it always to mountains and valleys, because sometimes you're going up a hill, like you're on your way to getting to where you want to be. Sometimes you're going down, and you can feel yourself going down. You're trying to prevent it, but it's inevitable. And for me, I feel like my experience with mental health started early. So I was the type of kid, and I don't think anyone has ever related to me on this tip, but I was the type of kid where I used to sit in kindergarten. Never forget this. Sit in kindergarten, we going over shapes, whatever happened. And I used to think about the fact that I was thinking. I used to think about my existence. I used to think about my mind. I was so infatuated with the fact that I could not say anything and still have whole conversations in my mind. Like the power behind that. Like someone could say something to me, I could respond to them and not say anything, and they would never know what I said. But it came from here. And that literally is, that infatuation with the mind is literally what brought me to me talking to you, because this was an idea, right, that I created, and now it's being actually created. It's here. But with that level of self-awareness, to me, is what really brought my anxiety. Like, my connectedness to my mind is really what put me in the position where I was like, hold up, like, this is a little much. And what's wild is a lot of people who know me don't know that, like, for a long time, I had very crippling anxiety, social anxiety, which is surprising to a lot of folk, because I was the type of dude who was always hosting the talent shows in high school, and I would be on the mic during the pep rallies, and I would talk to as many people as possible, even though, like, I was an extroverted introvert. I think the term is an ambivert, where you kind of have both sides. And a lot of people think that anxiety means like crowding in a corner. Right now, there's this young sister named Summer Walker who just pops, in my opinion, like just popped. Put out a dope album, pretty dope album. But her performances, people said, were a little lackluster. And she said, I suffer from very bad social anxiety. Like, I'm not no hugger. I don't like talking to strangers. I like recording. I like chilling in the crib. And that's about it. Like, I'm not here for all the extras. And a lot of people was coming for her, but anybody who really recognizes the feeling, like the tightness in your chest, the steel butterflies in your stomach, the sweat that comes out of absolutely nowhere in places that you don't need it to be, the dry mouth, all of that comes with that level of anxiety. Like, anyone who has experienced that before recognizes that, like, that's nothing to play with, right? And it doesn't look the same for everybody. Like I wrote, with anxiety, there is this obsession with the possible negative unknown that sometimes fully engulfs all likelihood of optimistic outcomes. Meaning, anything that could go wrong will go wrong. And it's running in a reel to reel in my head. Like, if I get up right now, I'm in class. Imagine you in class, right? And you had a pack of pens. You're on your last pen. So you have an empty pack, a piece of cardboard, right? You want to go throw it away. But literally, anxiety is telling you, if you get up right now, number one, your butt crack might be showing. Your fit not that fly right now, so people gonna probably be like, boy, what you got on? You could trip, you could bust your head open, or you could just trip and fall and everybody laugh you out. So literally, with all of that happening, just as you look at the piece of cardboard, that all of those thoughts you just had in less than 2 seconds, you make the decision to just leave that joint on your desk and keep it pushing, instead of throwing a piece of trash away. And remember, like, that is just a small scenario. Amplify that to if you're at work, if you are in the position where you have to speak in front of people, anything. And that level of anxiety can happen to anybody, but on many different levels. For me, some of the most triggering events that I used to have anxiety for, I used to play piano. I still can't play, but I used to, like, my pops used to be like, boy, before you do anything, you better take all them ivories. And we used to have recitals. And I used to do really well playing. But sometimes my instructor would, like, stand me up and rap about me to, like, the crowd. And to me, that was just, like, the worst. Like, bro, just let me go back to my seat. I'm not here for all the particulars. I played my piece. It was cool. Let me sit down. I used to host talent shows, and I would get up there, and it wasn't about, I would kind of black out, do well, but it would be the interactions afterwards, where it's like people telling me how I did. I don't want to hear about how I did, because that means more social interaction. I'm a homebody now because a lot of times I have a lot of anxiety about being out and about and being in situations that I can't control. And all of those things can't even really be connected to a certain event. It is just the way my brain is wired. And I think a lot of people have to understand that you don't have to be completely on someone's same wavelength when it comes to understanding their mental illness, understanding their anxiety, understanding their depression. Because you know why? You're not in their mind. You can't fully understand their mind. So if you're connected to somebody who has mental illness, the best thing, and you're trying to support them, the best thing you can do is just validate how they're feeling. Now, I will preface it with this, right? For folk who suffer with mental illness, recognize that these people can't read your mind. And a lot of times when we're anxious and depressed, we don't want to communicate with people exactly how we feel. One, because that's going to take too much energy and we're already drained to begin with. Two, a lot of people, you just know for a fact that it's just not going to go down like that. And people aren't going to understand where you're coming from. And three, sometimes we don't know how to fully explain how we're feeling to ourselves. Like, bro, why did I wake up today and I'm just extremely scared of the unknown? That's hard to explain to someone, especially when someone who is probably going to respond with like, well, why? And you're like, I don't know why. That's the whole point of this conversation. And a lot of times, I think people have described anxiety as the enemy, right? Attacking your mind, as the enemy coming against what God has destined for you. And I think that's not bad gospel. I think there is some validity in saying that a negative voice in your head that is overtaking the promises of God definitely can be connected to the enemy. But there also has to be, in response to that, a thorough analyzation of the experiences of your life, right? That possibly could have planted the seed where those voices could have started in the first place. Whether that would have been an abusive parent, whether that would have been a bad relationship, whether that would have been an overzealous parent who placed too much value in utility and accolades growing up, and didn't just instill in you a value within oneself. And I think a lot of millennials, especially, who grew up in the era of not the participation trophy era, but more so the first place and nothing era. If your parent was like that, or people around you was like that, there is kind of this self-competition. And especially when you were good at something for a very long time, and then all of a sudden you got to a threshold where you had to really start working hard to do well in things, and things didn't naturally come easy, that brought out a level of anxiety that probably wasn't there prior to. And I think a lot of people suffer from that. But I know for me, my anxiety was rooted in so many different things that I never really could pinpoint. And because there wasn't an actual event that I could connect it to, I shrugged it off for years because it wasn't that bad. Up until I got to school. My dad had passed away at this point, and like a lot of us do, I pressed pause on the processing and the healing part. I was just like, death is a part of life. Pops was a great dude. I have a part of him in me, so I will carry him, keep him alive in me, keep it pushing. Fast forward like 2 years, and everything just kind of seemed to hit me at once, which is what a lot of our trauma does. It doesn't just go away. No matter how far we push it down, it will always show itself eventually, whether it be projected on the people that we love, or in our insecurities, or in our obsessions, in our passions. And for me, it showed up in my quiet time. It showed up in the moments when I would get back from hanging with my friends, having a great time, or get back from an event that I hosted, or get back from class where I was, participating. Professors is like, good answer, Charles, and during the whole class discussion around a good topic that I brought up. So experiences where I'm supposed to be operating up here, but I would get back, I would close my door, and I would just sit and feel things that I didn't want to feel. Sadness, frustration, and that is when I feel like I entered into the realm of depression. And I got so comfortable in it. I never really explored it. And because I got so comfortable in it, I lived with it for so long. It engulfed me to the point where I just thought it was going to become my norm. And that is so dangerous, because when we become comfortable in our discomfort, it only prolongs the process of healing. When toxicity, when hurt, harm, danger have infiltrated the heart, the spirit, and we have numbed ourselves to it, right? It's like mental and emotional, spiritual Novocaine. It's like, it's whatever. I became so apathetic about life. And in hindsight, I'm so taken aback by the fact that I was able to operate in that daily, all day. I am disheveled. No one really knows. I'm laughing, I'm joking. Like, if I'm around my peoples, I'm probably the one that's like sparking a lot of the laughter, so no one knows anything except I do. Intrusive thoughts going in and everywhere. And when I say intrusive thoughts, I mean thoughts that are not indicative of who I really am, right? But they present themselves anyway. And as soon as they present themselves, I had to either denounce them, or they unsettle my spirit, because I know that that's not truly who I am, right? And I think a lot of people suffer from those things and don't know what to do with them. It took me so long to start the process of unraveling the things that I've been through that got me to that point. But I want to stay on intrusive thoughts for a little bit. And sorry if I'm jumping around, but mental health, my process with dealing with this is a little jumbled. It's not a one-way street. It's not a step-by-step process. It really was me just figuring it out as I go. So when it came to intrusive thoughts, I used to have very like horrid, I call them mind creations, because that's what thoughts are, creations of the mind. And our mind is so complex that sometimes we do think things will pop up into our head and we're just like, where did that come from? Right? And I had to learn to tell myself that every time I would have one of those thoughts, it did not define me, right? It was not a true testament to who I am as a person. And when I took that pressure off myself of trying to prove every time that, like, if I had an intrusive thought, like, that's not me, that's not me, that's not me, that's not me. That was the first step. But then eventually I let them come and I let them go. And once you start doing that, it dissipates a little bit. Once you recognize them for what they are, they have less power. And taking the power away from things that you think you'll always be victim to is a major step in doing away with the stigma of, doing away with the struggle of mental illness. One thing that you do have to always remember when it comes to starting the process to healing from mental illness is be very particular about your counsel. The word says seek wise counsel. Because who you seek counsel from, you give access to. And everybody doesn't deserve access to you fully. Whether that be friends, family, significant others. I'll stop at significant others. If you feel like you can't give access to your significant other in a way that, you can express some of your mental issues, it's really time to reevaluate the person that you have connected yourself to. I did at the time that I really made my first step. When it comes to friends, every friend ain't the best to wrap you up about depression and anxiety. It's just not. You got friends who you step out with. You got friends who you can start businesses with, talk shop with. And then you have friends who can really speak to your spirit. And those type friends really are the best. Shout out to everybody in my life who I've had some very open-hearted questions with, because it took me a lot to get to that point. And then lastly, your family. We give you praise and honor, God. Honestly and truly, like, some family members just don't have the bandwidth, the breath with the D. They don't have it to speak to you and where you are. And sometimes it's the most churchiest folk in your family who will say the exact wrong thing. That was not the Holy Ghost that just came out your mouth. That was ignorance. If in 2020 we're still talking about solely praying things away, who made the rule that Jesus and therapy had to be separated? They don't have to be at all. Jesus is in therapy. Getting to the point to doing the work where you can have a level of tranquility and peace within the mind, which gives you the energy to seek God more because you're not in such a rut. You feel what I'm saying? Because some of us have been so down bad where it's like, I don't even feel like calling on God because I don't even know if he's really hearing me. Because if he was, why am I feeling this way in the first place? Honestly and truly. But if we do get to the point where we muster up enough energy to get to therapy, and our therapist helps us sort our thoughts out to the point where it's like, you know what, it wasn't God that put me in that position. It was God who brought me out of that position. And clearing up things, and just I'll give you an in right now. I'll give you some free therapy for folk who, still figuring out their Medicare. Insurance be out here. It be taxing. There's no copay needed. You feel me? Just subscribe. Therapy ain't nothing but talking to yourself in a more healthy way. And to somebody who's directing your conversation. I've been in many a therapy session. Actually, I haven't. I've been in very limited because it can be a lot sometimes. But every therapist I ever have ain't said more than probably a paragraph worth of words per session. And every therapist isn't going to be a perfect fit. When we say go to therapy, that means go do the work to find yourself a good therapist, and then the process can really start. Because I had this one sister in undergrad, all she did was the whole time. And sometimes can be affirming. But sometimes, beloved, okay, I know you can hear. But if I'm like, I was really going through some things like, yes. And I really think that it was time, like, I really started getting my mind right. Like, girl, did you just have key lime pie? Like, is something savory in this joint? Like, just let me tell my story and then respond. Like, there's going to be people who might not be your perfect fit, but that doesn't mean be discouraged. But back to the lecture at hand. I will say that the process from recognizing that it's like, yo, I cannot stay in this rut anymore, to finishing the beginning stages of that process it takes everyone a different amount of time. For me, I would say that I was down bad for probably a year and a half, and the get back took me about a year and a half. I'm at the point where I don't wake up anymore and I'm anxious. I have mood swings like any other human being. And sometimes I have to check myself because I might feel like my moods are having a lull that's going a little too low. So when that happens, I do a check-in with myself. I check in with God. I tune in with God. And sometimes I feel like he allows those lulls to be a reminder of where I've come from, and also the fact that I need him in my life in order to operate at a certain level. Everyone is different, man. Some people were in worse positions than I was. And in the Christian community, in the community of believers that I've been a part of for a very long time, there just, to me, started being a thorough conversation about mental health in the Christian community. You got pastors killing themselves. You got pastors who are taking sabbatical for mental health reasons. And I think that it's beautiful because of the fact that it is so necessary to recognize that in God we can rest. In God we can retreat within ourselves because he is in us. And we have to remind ourselves of that sometimes. It's just so, it's beautiful because I know where I've been and I know where I'm going. I assume where I'm going. God might be like, boy, bust a left. And I think I'm going right. But honestly and truly, there's no better feeling than the security of when you know God had you. And I think that anxiety and depression put me in the position where I felt like I wasn't connected to him, wasn't connected to myself. I really didn't feel connected to anybody around me thoroughly. I had and have great relationships with the people who were around when I was at my lowest. But at the time, I felt like there was nobody in the world who could really speak to my spirit to the point that I was going to be brought out of the rut that I was in. It wasn't until I went to Morocco, for a whole semester, it was 3.5 months, I saw the dedication of folk in the Islamic faith, for a whole country's clock to be on the schedule of worshiping God. That's like, if you go to Morocco, stores will shut down, schools will close at certain times of the day because folk is out here praying. Straight like that. If you Islamophobic and like that bothers you, you're kind of weird because they're worshiping the same God. But that's really the reality of the situation. The whole country on God's clock. Crazy, right? Actually, no, not crazy. That's inspiring. And I commended them so much because there's a lot that goes into practicing and being that devout. And it kind of put me in my place where it's like, here I am down bad. I was down bad even while I'm in a whole new country, whole new experiences. And it shifted my mindset. And I think that's one major aspect to bringing yourself out and maneuvering mental warfare, is shifting your mindset towards a healing mindset. Because anxiety will rob you of the ability to be nice to yourself internally. Like I said earlier, compliment turns to insult, accolade turns into put down, confidence turns into doubt, straight like that. And being over there and seeing how consistent people were tuning in with God, I started to do the same. And when you talk to God, that's probably the best entity that you can talk to ever, because you're not going to ever hear anything negative from God. You're only going to hear things that are going to make you better. They might convict you. They might, the things that God says might put you in a position where you have to check yourself and change some things around, but they're not going to put you in a position where you're going to be worse off because of it. And I had to recognize that for myself. It was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And when I came back, I promised him, I said, I'm going to be more intentional about this. So adjustments were made. Habits were formed. I started reading my Bible more than I ever had. I went to therapy. I was officially diagnosed with anxiety, because up until that point, I had just kind of assumed. I was like, dang, I'll be sad sometimes. But going to the therapist and them saying like, no, you are definitely anxious and depressed. They prescribed me little pills. I took them for about 2.5 months. No, longer than that. I got the pills in June. I think I took my last Journal in like November. Going of my junior year. So about 5 months. And the prescription was supposed to last me well into like a year. But I was so tuned in with God. I wanted him to be a part of the process. So in that, he was like, all right, it's time to lean on me solely. So and when he told me that, never took one again, and haven't taken one since. Haven't needed to. Honestly and truly, my mind is clearer than it ever has been. My mind is, to me now, my best. Like, one of the best parts of who I am is the fact that all of who I am comes from my mind. I'm speaking to you, these words that are coming out of my mouth that hopefully you're receiving comes from the beauty that is my mind, this black man's mind. And for all my folk who are still going through mental warfare, you have to recognize that right now you are experiencing the dark side of your mind. But there's still so much beauty connected to who you are that comes from up here. And it's connected to your spirit, it's connected to your heart. And don't ever forget that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And in the way that God made you, he made your mind. Those intrusive thoughts are not who you are. The levels of anxiety that you're experiencing, the deepness of your depression that you might be experiencing is not permanent. I had to constantly remind myself of that as well. It was at a point where things got so bad where I was like, well, God, I think this just really might just be the rest of my life. Like, I guess I'm just supposed to wake up and be sad every day. And there was always a faintness like that. Can't be true. And we all know what the faith of a mustard seed does. And it was those moments when God didn't allow me to fully succumb to the negative feelings that I guess kept me. Because I still wonder sometimes why I had to go through what I went through in order to get to where I am. Like why I couldn't just wake up and be in the best of moods every day. And I mean, I know that's not realistic, but I feel like sometimes I wonder why I had to be so down bad to be where I am now. And that's a question that still has yet to be answered. But I think it is partly because now I can speak to it because I came out of it. And so many of us are able to minister to others because of our own experiences. And I would be remiss not to do the same. Because at the end of the day, like, the things that we go through, our testimonies that we have, you can't forget that they're not solely for you. God brought you out of things not solely just for you, but for you to go out and to find someone with a similar story who could benefit from you telling yours. So that's what I had to do today. That's why you're listening to what I'm saying right now. mental health, mental warfare, mental illness. It's all of these things that especially brothers and sisters have to pay more attention to. And it's gonna take a lot out of people. But I think that the generations after us are going to be in such better position because of it. Because imagine if you came from an abusive household, imagine what therapy could have done for your father and for your mother in the way that they spoke to you and your siblings. Imagine what therapy could have done for your levels of communication that you had to unlearn because of the way people spoke to you growing up. Imagine what a level of positive introspection could have done for the way that you perceive yourself, for the way that your parents perceive themselves, and the way that our ancestors perceive themselves after being treated so terribly, after being called so many different names, after being physically abused for so long, after being treated the way that they were treated, and coming out of that. How many of our ancestors really had the opportunity, had the chance, right? Had the time to sit and think about what they were thinking about, to sit and process all the pain that they were carrying, to sit and heal from all of the trauma that they experienced. And I talk about this a lot because it is something that is happening right now. We are the harvest of the seeds that our ancestors planted. And I feel like, and I don't like to speak on our ancestors' behalf because a lot of us do that, and in a way we take away from their autonomy when we do that. But I like to assume that we are the harvest of the seeds our ancestors planted, and they always intended that harvest to be bountiful. And in that way, we have their blessing to be the best versions of ourselves as possible. And in that way, God is not going to allow that promise to be undone. I appreciate everybody who's showing me love on the Red Sea jump, on the Red Sea tip. Red Sea has been, it's my podcast, bro. I can literally talk about anything I want to. Red Sea has been great for my mental because it's my baby. It came out of my own ideation. This is, if for those who are not familiar, Red Sea Apparel is my clothing line. It's an inspirational clothing line. 10% of all proceeds go to academic scholarships. Right now we're doing a sock drive on February 1st for the homeless population in DC. All I want to do is inspire and give back to my community. If I make a little money on the way, that's cool. But God planted that. I believe in it. I've been investing a lot of time and energy into it. I quit one job because I felt like I couldn't give enough energy into it. And right now the position that I'm in allows me to work on it more. And I think for me, once this junk gets to a certain level, it's going to open up so many doors for so many people, not just myself. And I think that I encourage everyone to have at least one passion project that does the same for them. Because watching something go from your mind and holding it in your hands, like, I can touch this, I thought of this. And for some people, it's like, bro, like, it's just a hoodie, like, it's not that deep. But to me, it very much is. Because I always want to be intentional and purposeful in the things that I do, especially when I'm connecting it to my faith. And this is a new revelation for me. I've been rapping for a long time, but this is a new revelation for me where it's like my faith is so important to who I am as a being. Because without it, I really don't know where I would be. I really don't know what my day-to-day would look like if I had given up on God. when the thought crossed my mind. And this is a constant reminder every time I put it on my back that God is real, God is with me. He's never gonna leave me nor forsake me. Voice cracking, but we cool. It's everything and then some to feel like God is behind you in something. And I feel like He's behind me in this. So these links is everywhere, like on my socials. Like I post it all the time. Follow me on Instagram at bro.unk.charles. Follow Red Sea Apparel at red.c.apparel. Follow the Church Basement Pod at churchbasementpod. And keep showing me love. Even if like right now I'm talking to myself, I appreciate it. Because I know that this is just my own therapy right now. And that's cool with me. But be blessed. Thank you for tuning in as always. Click that subscribe button if you're on YouTube. Like and share if you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Like shoot me a follow or whatever. Support in any way that you can. Always remember, it's all love in the basement. And be blessed, y'all. See y'all next week.